Thanks for joining me today. The topic for today's video will be getting started with Dell Thin Clients running Windows IoT. This is a brief overview of some of the agenda items that we plan to cover throughout the training video today. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with the first topic, which is local user accounts. One of the first things you may notice when you turn on your new Dell Thin Client with Windows IoT is it automatically logs in, and it logs in as the user account. There's two local accounts by default, the admin and user. The user is locked down with some local group policies. The admin password is going to be admin pound service tag, and the user password is user pound service tag. So let's demonstrate that. This is my system as it just booted from the factory. So it auto logged in with the user. I want to go ahead and try to access, for example, File Explorer. You'll notice that that's locked down. That's a local group policy because this user account is restricted in the type of activity that it can do. If I want to log in as the admin user, it's pretty simple. I'll just go in here and I'll sign out. And again, I see one of those two user accounts. So I see user and admin, and I can log in as the admin account. Remember, the default admin password is going to be admin pound the service tag of the device. Now I'm in as administrator, so I can access the File Explorer. However, one of the things to note is a lot of people will try to install applications at this point, and they'll notice that when they reboot, they're gone, and that's because the write filter. So let's go ahead and get on to topic 2 for today, which is the unified write filter. So the unified write filter, it prevents changes that are made to the device from persisting on reboots. That's when it's on, they're going to commit to RAM and never commit to disk. Um, One thing is that WMS is write filter aware, so if write filter is on and you push an update, it'll turn it off and then push that out. I'm in here as admin, so you can see there's a shortcut to turn off write filter. So let's go ahead and click that. Uh, Changing the write filter state will cause a reboot. So as I turn it off, it reboots and it automatically logs back in as the user. Now I can go ahead and log out like I did before and log back in as the admin. Once I'm in as the administrator with write filter off, this is where I could manually make any changes and install applications to the system. This is most like a regular PC or a Windows device that you're used to seeing in day-to-day. There's no write filter. I am getting a warning because many of the thin clients that ship from Dell have an EMCC storage that is not meant to be written to for years at a time. So when your write filter is off, it's going to write to that, but that's again, that's just off when you're making changes. I want to open up the Application Control Center as administrator so that you can see specific settings with the write filter. One of the unique things about the write filter is it is file-based, or you can make exceptions. So I mentioned that changes do not persist across reboots when write filter is on. That's the general rule, but you can make exceptions. So if there was files or folders that you wanted to be able to update, you could add them to your exclusions list here again. Not something really all that commonly needed to do. So that is the two basic user accounts. The next thing that we're going to get into, go ahead and I turn the write filter back on before we get to the next subject, is talking about configuring the device with Wyse Management Suite. If you don't have WMS, there's the link to go ahead and get the trial. I'm going to use my WMS tenant in the cloud, and I'm going to log in. For the purpose of today's event, I created a group. I'm going to call that demo group. You have a global policy. You can create groups underneath here and apply policies to them. You can see the registration key, and I'll need that later so that the noise shows up here. So I'm going to go ahead and click Edit Policies, and I'm going to select a Windows IoT policy. And I'm going to do a couple of things here. I'm going to configure the experience. I'm going to set a wallpaper. This just makes it easy when I'm so I can visually see once the policy is applied. So I'm going to select this Dell background and go ahead and stretch. And the only other change I'll make to the policy, it's useful when I'm demonstrating to go ahead and set the power settings just to keep the any of the displays from shutting off. So I'm just going to make sure these are all set to never. Again, we won't use this Windows IoT policy for very much. You'll see later on we're upgrading to a 2.x policy. But for demonstration purposes, it's nice that we've got a nice background. So now I've got a simple base config under the demo group, and I've got a background and a couple power related settings in those devices. So if we go ahead and we switch back to the device, it locked while I was away, so I'm logging back in as user. And now I need to specify my WMS server and the group key, and I can't do that as user. So once again, I'll log out and log in as admin. So now I'm logged in with admin. The right filter is on. That is okay. I can make this type of change and apply the WMS settings. So logging in, again, the default password is still in place. If I click on the right here, I can see the green. That means right filter is on. That's just a warning there. And then I open up the WDA console. It's trying to auto discover right now, which I don't currently have set up. So I'm going to go ahead and set my Wyse Management Server, which is the cloud-based one, in the default port of 443. And then I need to enter the group key. That includes the tenant and the group key, which my tenant for this case was that DE12 slash demo group #1. And that'll tell my device which WMS server to go to and which group that it belongs in. And if everything's working correctly, then the policies that are applied to that group will apply to this device, which would be those power settings in the background. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and confirm the key. Okay, I just checked back there to see exactly what it was, got it case sensitive and all, and go ahead and hit register. And now the device begins the registration process on the system. At this point, it looks like it is going to successfully register. And if it registers correctly, it goes ahead and pulls down the wallpaper and customize it. So we'll no longer see these hot air balloons. Okay, it's notifying me here. Um, it's going to count down, or I can go ahead and hit update now. So it'll begin to apply the changes. And there we go. We got the wallpaper. Just opening up the WDA console, you could see a message that said successfully registered on the device and then minimized it. If I open up my WMS console, I can now see the device inside of there. It's registering as a Windows IoT policy. If I click on the device, I can see more information about the device and I can see the policy. So right there, I was showing you, that's the WinIoT 1X policies that are applied to the device. And I can confirm that they're coming to the device. Now let's talk about the Dell Application Store. The Dell Application Store is actually a software bundle of our Dell value add software. It includes the WDA, the Wyse Easy Set. You can see the list of things here. Here's a quick screenshot that explains if you need to pause, and you can see what these pieces are and more important. But it's important anytime that you're using a Windows IoT device that you get the latest Dell Application Store, your latest packages. Here I'm showing you where you can download it. You should just be able to, this is a Dell Optiplex 3000 client we're using, and then I can go ahead under drivers and downloads. I need to switch the operating system to IoT. I don't want to look for my ThinOS. And once I'm inside of here, I can search, or if I just type Dell, start to type Dell Application Store, I can see that. And again, that's that latest bundle of software to update a number of things. Probably the most important thing in this case is that Wyse Device Agent, just to make sure that communication. So I'm running the latest version of WMS and the latest version of the Wyse Device Agent. Now let's go back to the console. And again, I mentioned you could get that there. If you're using the cloud instance, it should be available for you. So let's just go out to apps and data and let's confirm that that app is there. And we look under our apps and we scroll through our list here and we should see the Dell Application Store. Okay, that's not the latest version. The latest version we're looking for is there and it has been loaded by a global administrator. So now we're going to look at an app policy. The first policy we're going to do is just a standard app policy. And we'll go ahead and call this one push DAS, or put for the Dell Application Store. We'll apply it to our demo group. The OS type, we're using Windows IoT, and then we need to select the application. Again, we're using that Dell Application Store latest version. I could filter by the version of IoT or the platform, but in this case, I don't need to. This is important. I need to make sure I do -- silent because this is not a silent install by default. So anytime I'm pushing an app policy, and I'm going to go ahead and say we'll push it later. I could push it here. I just want to be able to show you exactly how to push it. Once I find the device, I can click on the device inside of here, and you can again, see more actions. You can see all that. I want to point out that the Dell Application Store is not installed in the list. We'll see the difference after this is successfully completed. Also look at the version numbers of the Application Control Center and the Application Launch Manager. Those are components in this bundle that is going to be upgraded, as well as the Wyse Device Agent and Wyse Easy Setup. So those will be, it's a good idea to often take a screenshot of those versions before you do this upgrade. But now I select the device, and then under more actions, I have the option to schedule an app policy. And I'm going to schedule the app policy to push the app called Push DAS, and I'm going to say go ahead and do it immediately. And I'm going to push that out to the device. Again, of course, I could schedule that. Now we flip back to the device view. It gets a message almost instantly that says, oh, you want to go ahead and do your updates. And now I'm going to set a clock. You'll see this throughout the rest of the training day. I like to set up a little stopwatch so you can see the real time it takes to eat these, because I don't want to set wrong expectations, even though in my videos sometimes I speed up. And if we look at the jobs, I can see the Dell Application Store policy is in progress. We can check back later and see that that's completed. Looking at the device right here. Again, going back to here again, the clock on the device. So it started at reboot, and it's already starting the installation process of this Dell Application Store. Again, it's a pretty significant bundle. You saw there was about 6 or 7 different pieces of software that are going to be updated on the system. So I would expect that it's going to take a good 10 minutes or so. Again, I didn't want to record that and keep that real time just for a purpose of the training video. So you can see at this point, after about 10 minutes, the system has rebooted up, and it's got the video. It says it's about 10 minutes and 15 seconds into it. If I click back over to my Wyse Management Console, and I look at the job, I can see here that I do have a success on this device. So the Dell Application Store, if I look at the device now, I click on it, and once I click on the Installed Apps tab, I can actually see the numbers increased, and notice that now Dell Application Store is present there. And if I made a note of those other Dell Value Add Thin Client software components, you can see that the version has been updated. So now I'm running my Windows IoT device. It's being managed by WMS. I got the latest Wyse Device Agent and the other components. Now let's talk about updating to support Windows IoT 2.x policies. For that, I'm going to need the config UI utility. You can see on the left here, the OS type is showing as Wyse IoT, and we want it to show as 2.x to take advantage of some of the advanced features. So in this case, what I'm going to do is go ahead and go back into my app policies. Within my app policies, this time I'm going to go ahead and select an advanced policy. Advanced policies are available to WMS Pro users, and I'm just going to call this one, I guess, demo. Let's say install config UI. And again, this is updating the UI so that now I can read these more advanced um, Windows IoT 2.x policies. The application, again, it's the OS is Windows IoT, and then I'm going to go ahead and choose from my drop-down list inside of here the config UI utility. One of the things with advanced we'll get to later, I could do multiple applications in one package. This advanced one, we're just going to do one. We also need that same -- silent to make this silent install. And we'll go ahead with the rest of the defaults and go ahead and save that. This time, sure, we'll go ahead and push it right now. Do we want to schedule it? And we'll say, yes, we want to go ahead and push the config UI. We get the app policy, and then we'll go ahead and run it immediately. So that pushes it out to the device. So now we can go ahead and flip back to the device. Again, check our policy here before we get to that. And we see that it is running. And again, we'll check back later there. Okay, the device has already got the notice, and I've started my stopwatch. So we'll go ahead and say, yes, there's an update pending. Let's go ahead and update that device and start our stopwatch. And now we're going to install the new config UI so the device is capable of reading these more advanced Windows IoT 2.x policies. And since our device is going to be capable of reading those 2.x policies, let's go into our groups and configs. And we've got that group. And remember, we created a Windows IoT policy, but let's go ahead and create policy in the new format so that the device, when it reboots, can read that. So we're going to go ahead and we'll add a few more things this time because this policy is what we're ultimately going to use. So I'm going to make this more realistic in what you might have. So I've got my time server set. I want to go ahead and set the time zone on my thin client devices. So this group of devices happens to be in the Eastern time zone. So we'll go ahead and set that for the devices. So when they come up, they check in with a time server, they set themselves there. Also, it's kind of annoying or a pain for me to have to remember that default user and admin password because they're different for every device based on the service tag. So I'm going to set a standard user and admin password on all devices going forward so that I can have that information here. Again, there's some complexity rules involved in that. Um, Desktop experience, like I did before, I like to set a Dell. I'm going to do a little bit Dell different wallpaper just so it's really easy to see that and go ahead and stretch that on the system. So you'll see um, a nice light blue background with the Dell logo once these systems get there. The power settings, similar to how my 1.x settings, I like just to go ahead and say when we're plugged in, let's go ahead and not worry about ever putting the device to sleep again. Particularly when I'm demonstrating or creating training videos, it's nice to make sure the devices are not going to sleep. So we'll go ahead and set those just to never as part of my policy. Let's see what else. There should be a few other things that we may want to start, but we'll go ahead and we'll just save and publish with that for now. Again, it's just saying, yeah, we're updating the policy um, for those devices. There's no devices reading those policies right now, so we're okay. So there is my IoT and then my IoT 2.x. Again, setting the time server, setting the passwords, setting the personalization of desktop experience, um, setting, again, changing those default passwords on the system. And let's go into the advanced. And yeah, this is one more I was thinking of. Let's go ahead and just turn on VNC. This is a useful feature as well. So under WMS settings. So if I do want to remotely control to that device using a VNC viewer, I can do that. So I'm going to say don't prompt the user. So if they're not there, and then I set a password so that I've got some so I can VNC remotely control the device. So I'll do that. So these are all the settings that are kind of in that demo group. So once the new config UI is applied, if it's reading correctly, it'll read this 2.x policy and get the more advanced things. It'll get the updated wallpaper. It'll get the update the local user accounts. It will do those. So the device has rebooted. It's saying it's needed a reboot. Remember that countdown is still going on there from what I had before. So we're 5 minutes and whatever it is, 6 minutes. It's going by quick now. Again, trying to be more realistic so you can understand how long and how many reboots are involved in each of these processes in case you're following along with your uh, new clients. Okay, so now we're back to the device and it looks like it went ahead and installed. It was again about 9 minutes and it's up and now it's reading that 2.x policy. If I look at the device, I can see that it's checked into the demo group. If I scroll on the device, I can see now the policy settings here and all of the policy settings now are the 2.x settings on the device. That makes sense. If I look at my device, um, I can see the jobs and just confirm here now that I've got a success installing my config UI on that device. So is that easy? Now I've got the latest Dell application store. I've got the latest config UI. So let's talk about now updating the device to get the latest Windows updates. And I'm going to use the unified servicing mode. This is a pro feature that's available on here. Here's some of the screenshots that you'll see as we go through this, and you'll see that it's in progress. So what I'll show you, there's a couple different ways to initiate this. Um, but before we do that, let's see what we're doing. If we look under System Info and go under Operating System, we can see now the QFEs that are installed, but more importantly, the missing QFEs. So there was at least 4 QFEs that are missing from this device. So we want to make sure we can get the latest Microsoft updates on this system. If I click on the device from in here, I could go ahead and I could initiate the right filter servicing mode. I could also do it from this view, which would allow me to select multiple devices and initiate the right filter servicing mode. And thirdly, I could go into my jobs, and from the jobs, I can actually schedule a device command. And one of those device commands that I could pick would be to do the right filter servicing mode. And then I could schedule it to run over a time period. So maybe I wanted it to run on Tuesday morning at 2 a.m. But let's go ahead and just kick it off for this one device here. And I'm going to go ahead and send a command to the device to go and initiate the right filter servicing mode. So the device gets the command, accept it, and it's go ahead and update it. Again, I'm going to start the stopwatch so you can see how long it takes on the device and what's going on. Essentially, what's happening is we're sending a command to the device. It's turning right filter off so that it can have changes pushed to it, and then it's going out to Microsoft and getting its latest updates. You can see it says in progress if I look under my events, and later on we'll want to check back to see that that's completed on the devices. So here's my device right now. It's going to be at that for a while. The UWF servicing is taking place, and again, this process, you can imagine. Again, you've got a large number of Microsoft QFE articles, and they're deploying to an image that this image at the time of this video was about 15 months out of date from Microsoft updates. There was a number of updates that needed to be applied to it, but at this point, looks like we're about 32 minutes into the system, 33 minutes into it, and it looks like it's went ahead and completed all of its updates on the system. So now I've got a system, again, latest Dell application store, latest components, reading the config UI, so it's reading the 2.x policies. And if we look at the system info under operating system details, before where we could see it says now the QFEs are up to date on my system. If we look at the events, we can again see that we had a successful UWF servicing mode complete. So I've upgraded and got the latest. Now let's go ahead and look at my device in here. And the next thing we're going to talk about is installing apps. And now we're talking about installing maybe your custom applications or updating apps on there. So the apps need to be installed. You can go ahead and browse and you can add them if they're not. Again, these are talking about adding your own apps. In this case, I just wanted to install a batch file. Again, the contents of the batch file in this case are not particularly important, relevant for the demonstration. It's really just to show you that if I needed to send some specific registry changes that maybe there weren't settings for, with Windows, you can always use PowerShell or command line or scripts. So with WMS, you can push those out to the device. So I went ahead and added that. This is the content of that reg batch demo. You can see it adds some things to the registry and does some power config changes, adjustments to the system. But now that's in my app inventory so that it's available to push and apply to the system out through a policy. As we can see it here, I just did a quick search and I see reg there. Also for the Thin Client, I'm going to add an advanced policy, and I'm going to call this install app. And again, I mentioned I'm using advanced policies now, which are a WMS Pro feature where I can do multiple applications at the same time. Still using that same demo group. My type is still a Windows IoT device that I'm using here for that. And then I'll just, again, pick the app. So the first app that I'm going to pick is I want to go ahead and go to get the latest workspace app. And again, I need the -- silent for this system. I also may want to install a custom application. Let's actually just say Chrome. So I went ahead and downloaded that and I uploaded that myself. Again, that won't be there by default. You would need to get that installer. This has a different set of install parameters. It's not always just // silent. This one's / silent / install. And then my batch file doesn't need any parameters. So three things will happen during this. It'll upgrade the CWA or Citrix Workspace app. It'll install Chrome on the system and then make some custom registry changes to the system. So let's go ahead and push that out to our system. Let's go ahead and just schedule it here first. And we select it from the drop-down list. And we're going to go ahead and say do that immediately and schedule that push to the system. So again, those two applications and then that batch file to make some registry changes. So flipping back to the client, you can see now I'm getting notification to go ahead and update the system now. And like in previous demonstrations, let's go ahead and do that. Let's start our timer and do an update now so we can see the system as it goes through that, applying those pieces to the system. I'm switching back into WMS just so you can see here. Now, if we look at CWA, notice that it's 2303. We'll see that it's 2403 is the later version when it's in. Also notice that there is no Chrome package. You can see alphabetically, Chrome is going to show up there. And then I don't have anything showing up to registry changes. I guess I could go back in there and manually look for those. So looking back to the device, again, it's going through the install process at this point. It will reboot a number of times. Again, it reboots, locks the user out, and it boots with the write filter off so that changes that are pushed can be committed to disk. And of course, you want those to be there. So again, we're updating the CWA, we're installing Chrome. We want those applications to be installed without write filter. We don't want them to reboot and then be gone. So this looks like it's went ahead and done a couple reboots with the write filter off and installing. And looks like everything is good on this. You'll notice Chrome is there now. I can launch it. Let's just launch it, test it, make sure that that worked without any problem. So I've successfully pushed Chrome onto the system. If I needed that again, of course, any application just need to make sure that you know the silent install parameters for those. And the best way to do that is just use a command prompt and see what it's looking for. If we go back to the device and then click on the installed apps tabs, again, you'll notice that the Citrix Workspace app, see Chrome is here, and also notice that the Citrix Workspace app is open on that device. All right, now let's talk about making a basic connection to a VDI desktop. We've done all this so far and get something maybe that would actually be useful to our users. So now I've been using this demo group the entire time. I'm going to add a subgroup to this, and this is where it comes into play. And I'm going to just call this Demo Citrix because I'm going to make a connection to a Citrix desktop. And I'm going to make this as a child group of my demo group. So that means any devices in this group will get all the policies applied to this, and then anything that filters down from above. So let's go ahead and edit my 2.x policy. And again, should be just a couple basic things I need. For my broker settings, I'm going to go ahead and choose a connection name for my Citrix server. So let's just call that Citrix. The connection type, I'm going to use a Citrix storefront. So I need to put in the name of my broker server from here. So just got to copy that from another location, paste it in here, and that's my broker server. And then this server is actually using HTTPS, so it's not going to be successful if I don't add the proper certificates. I've previously loaded them in apps and data, so now I can just choose to install certificates and check those boxes off inside of there, in there. So now this is the apps and data, and this is where, again, I put them in my file repository for them in there. And then let's go ahead and in the personalization, since I had that Dell wallpaper, let's just make it obvious. I do have a Citrix wallpaper so that any devices that are in this group, they will get the broker settings, they'll get the certificates, and then they'll get a nice purple wallpaper just to make it really obvious that they're in the Citrix group for those. So again, any device that's in that group would get those settings. My device is only in the demo group. I go ahead and I'll hide the things that are inherited. These are the things that get added by moving it down to this group. And let's go ahead. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's just select the device and change in group. and move him out of the demo group and move him into the child demo Citrix. So again, inheriting all the policies applied to the demo group in addition to all the policies in the demo Citrix group. The device, we look at that and we see, okay, it's already being notified that there's been a configuration change to the device. This will be really quick. I'll do the clock just for fun, but you'll see it's really only a few seconds because we're not installing anything at this point. We're really just pushing down configuration changes to the system. So it was that quick. So it added the shortcut to the desktop there for my Citrix, set the wallpaper again to that purple background to show clearly that I'm in that Citrix group. The certificates are successfully installed, or at least let's go ahead and verify they are by making a connection into my Citrix server. So once I launch that shortcut, I can see now it's going to ask me for my user credentials. Again, I'm not using pass-through because I'm logged in as the local user account. And that's, in most cases, that's probably one of the more efficient ways to do this is not worry about joining the device to domain and doing pass-through. Just having an auto log into the device with the secure local lockdown local user account, and then have the user enter their VDI credentials at this point. So let's pick a Windows 11 desktop to connect to and just see if that will go ahead and connect from my Windows IoT device. And it looks like it is going to go ahead and connect. And I've got my connection here. So this is my Windows 11 desktop connecting. Let's go ahead and log out of the remote desktop, and it will bring us back to the Thin Client desktop that we configured, our Windows IoT desktop. So again, this is really a common way to use an IoT device is really just a remote connection into some type of remote apps or remote desktops. So let's go ahead and restart the device. I just want you to see this because since it didn't restart when it applied those changes, I just want you to see after a fresh restart, it auto logs in as user and again, has that background applied and the new shortcut that we created. So for our next demo, let's go ahead and talk about configuring the Thin Client as a kiosk using Wyse Easy Setup. This is one thing it's not a lot of people know about, but if I have an IoT device, one of the things people are concerned about is locking it down or giving access to that full Windows desktop. Well, you can lock it down as a kiosk and prevent the users from having that full desktop. So I'm going to create a new subgroup. So remember I had the demo Citrix. I'm going to just call this VDI Kiosk. And so again, this will be again, another child group. So now I'm 2 layers down from my demo group, one from my Citrix demo group, and then I'll give it a group token key. And then I'm going to go ahead and enable kiosk mode for any device that gets added to this group. So I got to expand out there and I see my VDI kiosk and then my edit my policy. And again, remember, I'm using Windows IoT 2.x policies at this point after updating the config UI. So if I go under advanced, and then I should see a set for easy setup and then kiosk mode. So let's go ahead and just turn on kiosk mode inside of that. And then it'll automatically bring over the Citrix connection. But one of the nice things is, as long as I'm using IoT, I might want to be able to give the user access to some of the local applications. So I installed Chrome, so why not give them access to Chrome as one of the options for this applications? And then let's see if there are any other like highly used applications. So Windows Calculator, why not? There's no harm in that. So we'll give them Windows Calculator. And again, and I'll be fair to Microsoft, since we gave access to Chrome, let's give them access to using Edge on the system. So basically, I'm saying I want this device in a kiosk mode. I want them to be able to, I'm going to give them the ability to do a few more things here. It's pretty locked down. You can see it's very granular. I can give them time and date, display, network. I can give them the ability. I'll allow them to adjust a couple of things there. That's fine. Maybe I want them to be able to reboot the system. I might want them to be able to shut it down, but I don't want them to log off because I want it just to auto log in as that local user account. So let's just go ahead and save and publish that. That seems like a pretty good config. So I'm going to give them access to the Citrix, Edge, Internet Explorer, and the Microsoft Calculator, and then the ability to shut down and reboot the systems. You can see that's the policy. That's their island. When I hide everything that's inherited from above, that's what I see. So now last thing to do is take my device and go ahead and move it into that group. So I'm going to move it out of the Citrix demo group, and I'm going to move it into the child group. So again, It's continuing. We're building on everything we've done so far. As I look back at the device view, I can see it's getting a note where it's saying, yes, I need to update the system now. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Um, the configuration manager applies those changes to the device. And in this case, it will actually require a reboot of the system. And then I see it's initializing that easy setup components. Um, let's wait for the login on the system. And there it is. So now I no longer have your traditional Windows shell. I've made my Windows IoT device into more of what you'd expect as a thin client. I launch Calculator. I can do that. I can launch Edge in doing that, and of course I can launch Citrix as well if I want to get into my VDI desktop. So it's a nice way that I can get all of those settings. You can see from the control panel really got that locked down. Nothing there. And again, my shutdown and restart are my only really options on this. Again, really nice way to lock it down to a user where I get the advantages of using a Windows IoT, but kind of some of the security of and lockdownness of a thing. Now let's talk about the automatic configuration. This is the last demo. We did a lot of things step by step because I wanted you to see, but what if I really want to do multiple things at one time? I can use an advanced policy. And now I'm going to use an advanced policy. So let's say I get a new device and I want to do all these things at one time. There's really no reason to do them. Again, it was really for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to say, demo full configuration. And I'm going to say, I'm going to apply it to that VDI Kiosk group. So again, working on everything that we've done before. And then since I've got an advanced policy, there's no reason I can't just load up these applications and we're going to install them. It's going to do them in the order that it's here. So the first thing we want to do, I'd always recommend updating the Dell application store. Again, that gets your latest VDA, and then we'll go ahead and do the config UI support. The next thing I'm going to do again is I like that custom registry example that I have there. In my case, it actually does a couple things to keep the screen on across um, while I'm recording videos inside of there. So it's a useful, but again, you might have some other customization, red changes or PowerShells that you want to run on the system. Let's go ahead and upgrade our Citrix Workspace app since we know that systems that come from the factory may not always have the latest. And then why not? Let's go ahead and just install Chrome as part of our standard procedure. And again, we need to remember the unique install parameters. They're not always the same. So Chrome's a little bit different on those. But the difference here is we've always been saying do not apply automatically. We're actually going to say to go ahead and apply that to new devices. So we're going to apply this policy to new devices. So any device that gets added to this group will get these settings for us. So let's go ahead and save it. Just check everything looks good there, save it, and it's going to ask to apply, and we're going to say no, we don't just do that later. Now, again, I mentioned this being automatic. Before, I showed you a lot of logging in and out and logging in as admin and setting um, the WDA components, needing the group key and all that information on the device, and that can be kind of a pain. So what I'm going to do here, I've configured custom DHCP option tags, and so those are set in my Microsoft server. They're not there by default. You can just go up into the server options and add them there. There's lots of documentation on that. But I've went ahead and set my custom DHCP option tags. So now any new device that comes up, boots up, it gets its DHCP server, gets its default router and things like that. But it also says, oh, this is my WMS server, and this is the group that I need to be into. It gets into that group. Now there's a group policy. So I'm just checking here. This is the one I want them. I want them to go to the VDI kiosk. Let me just flip back to my server, finish setting that last option tag. So again, my WMS server is just the cloud instance, the MQQT server. Validation is true, and then it's go there. So now any device will get that information, automatically be connected to my WMS tenant in the group, and then it'll begin to apply the settings because I've got a policy that installs a whole group of apps to those devices. So this is a new device. This is not the one I had on earlier. First time booting it on, and it comes up, and again, I've started my timer, and it's already noticed that said, oh, I've got a configuration to apply because it had that. So notice zero touch really required for the user, the input. I just deploy them. I have my network configs that automatically tells it to go to my WMS server. And then again, I got that policy as devices are in that group, it begins installing its applications, et cetera, inside of that. So you can see we're really almost 22 minutes into it, but it did complete it. No interaction was needed. And so all that work I needed to do manually before, I've got my kiosk mode, I've got my Citrix server, I got those custom local applications that I have access to using Wyse Easy Setup on the system. Again, that's really leveraging the power of just being able to automatically configure the devices. So before we go, we mentioned that these devices had gotten those updates with the Dell Application Store and the config UI. Let's just go ahead and verify within the WMS console that we see them there as well. I can tell you it's a pretty big hint that since it's applying my 2.x policies, we know that the config UI was done there. You can see here it's the two devices. All right, this is the second device that we just added and I can see my installed applications. And we can see inside of the Dell application store is the Google Chrome. So all those pieces got installed just like we would have wanted them to. So again, covered a lot today, but hopefully now when you get your new Dell Thin Client with Windows IoT, this helps you a lot in getting started. Thank you and have a great day.